Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a first look at an upcoming premium Czechoslovakian heavy tank, the VZ-58 Medvedev. This tank has been in the game files for a while now, and some of you may also know it as the VZ-58 concept. It's exactly the same tank, however the concept has just been switched out for Medvedev. I believe it means bear in a lot of Eastern European languages, and especially Russian. So, the VZ-58 bear, I guess. So, statistically, let's have a look. 2.1k DPM, okay, that's pretty low. Definitely not going to be great. However, as you'll see in a second, that's technically not plain and simple. 440 alpha, that's kind of quite nice. That's pretty alright for tier 9 mediums. Penetration-wise, standard AP, 257mm. Kind of a little bit on the lower end, but it's definitely not going to be terrible. And APCR as gold, 325mm, is going to be pretty nice. Especially with this tank having a clip. It's going to have a auto-reloader. So it's going to have a potential clip damage of 1700. Yeah, that's pretty nice. You know, that 440 alpha, a clip size of 4, is going to be doing 1700 damage. However, it is going to take 11.25 seconds to do those 4 shots with an intra-clip reload of 3.75 seconds. So that is definitely not great. Kind of a similar style of clip to the Char Future 4, which is the tier 9 French medium tank. With that having 4 seconds intra-clip reload, this tank will feel very similar. However, its gun handling is going to be a little bit of an issue. So obviously, you know, you're clipping out at a tank, you know, you've got this 1700 clip potential, it's going to take you 11.25 seconds to do it, you've got 3.75 seconds between each shot. With its gun handling, it's got 2.88 seconds aim time, so you will be fully aimed between each of your shots. However, its dispersion will definitely be an issue. 0.43 is really quite bad. Even for heavy tanks, that is really towards the bad end of bad. I can't think off the top of my head if there's particularly any worse at tier 9. Yeah, you are going to be struggling to make sure every single one of those shots hit. You're going to want to be as up close and personal to your opponent, really, in this tank with that dispersion. And, you know, the clip potential is going to give you the ability to be able to do that, because that clip potential is enough to clip out, I believe, 95% of tier 9 heavy tanks. So it is going to give you the capability to be able to do it and be quite aggressive. But speed-wise, it's also not going to let you. So you can kind of see here, this thing's statistics are kind of trying to make it play in a certain way, but then other important statistics are contradicting that playstyle. 36 forward is definitely quite slow. You're 100% going to want to run a turbo on this tank, and you will have an extra slot because obviously it's a clip, can't run a gun rammer. So for example, if you run a Bond turbo 42 is passable. I feel like anything above 40 is passable nowadays. Anything below 40 is slow. You will struggle to get into games. And if you do run that standard turbo, you just get it to 40, which is not, you know, it's just okay. Basically, that's essentially just okay. Armor. First of all, gun depression. 8 degrees, very quite nice. The 8 degrees of gun depression is really quite nice, especially for a heavy tank. But armor. Hull armor 105 is not great. We'll have a look at what this means effectively in a second using the live armor model, but 270mm for the turret is pretty nice. Maybe that's a little bit weaker in effective armor, but maybe it's also better, because do you remember, 8 degrees of gun depression will allow you to change your angle of impact for your armor. And 1750 hit points does mean that this tank could clip itself out if it rolled average with every single one of its shots in its clip. It will take 11 seconds to do it, but it can do it. So that is something to bear in mind. And for a heavy tank, it's less relevant, but 390mm of view range is actually quite nice. Means it will be able to spot for itself in very situational positions. But let's have a look at this tank's armor. So visually, this tank looks pretty cool. It looks almost Italian-esque, I would say. The hull reminds me of tanks like the Basante, which is a Tier 8 premium Italian heavy tank. And its turret also kind of reminds me of the Basante a little bit, similar kind of angling, but it also does look similar to the other Czechoslovakian heavies we have in the game, for example, the Skoda T56, the TT130M, which is available through the Battle Pass. So let's have a look at this live armor then, and let's put it into a position as if it's using its gun depression 8 degrees on a ridge line. Okay, so that turret armor on the left-hand side is great. You know, you are not being penned here on the left-hand side or around the gun. However, if we look at it visually, as you can see, it has a very flat area on the turret, which looks to be a kind of gunner's viewport, potentially. And that is going to be a significant weak point, even when using your gun depression. At its thickest, it's 238 millimeters, 237. And it's not going to be hard to hit. It's pretty large. It's actually larger than the cupola. So, yeah. This tank is not going to be impenetrable hull down, and I like that. I very much agree with that. And once again, even on the hull, it's got this kind of tumor. I believe it's the driver's viewport, and as you can kind of see visually, it's very flat and sticks out very much from the hull, which is going to kind of be visible even when you're hull down, hiding your hull. It kind of peeks out up and over. So if your gun is visible and you're shooting an opponent, they will A, be able to see your cupola, B, be able to see your turret tumor, we'll put it like that, and then also your hull tumor. So this tank is pretty full of weak spots in terms of its armor as so far. Let's have a look at it. So as if it's on flat ground and it's driving at you. Okay, yeah. Not great. Its entire hull is basically a guaranteed penetration for pretty much any tank this will face. You know, it's tier 9 can face tier 7s. Yeah. You know, it's 200 millimeters at its thickest on its hull. You know, they're penning you. It does have a weird kind of funky angle here, which nothing is penetrating. It has, you know, 400, 500 millimeters in areas. And then once again, this like driver's viewport is very visible, but, you know, just shoot here. They will just shoot you here and pen you very easily. Cupola is huge on flat ground, so can't particularly do much kind of, you know, peeking over a flat hull down, trying to hide your hull. Your cupola is huge, and once again, your turret thing is visible. So armor-wise, this tank isn't looking particularly great. Can it side scrape? Let's have a look. Okay, kind of. It has a shot catch here, which will be penetratable. It can't be shot through the tracks very easily and take the tracks off, as well as damaging it. And it kind of, you might be able to bait shots, essentially. It's not going to be, I can side scrape and be unpenetratable. You might be able to bait them to shoot your side and not be able, and basically ricochet, shoot here on your turret. But once again, your cupola is visible. And something else, actually, I've just noticed is this tank has an overmatchable roof. It's only 140 millimeters, and its impacted armor is 40, so it can overmatch itself in the roof, which is something to bear in mind. And, you know, if we look at firing gold at itself, even then on flat ground, its turret is very weak. So this tank is not looking like a particularly well-armored heavy tank. It's kind of, in my opinion, going to play very similarly to almost like a heavily armored medium tank, but just very slow. It's not going to have the armor to be able to play a hull down and be impenetrable, but it does have its very, very, very strong clip of 1760, which, as I said, is going to have the capability to be able to clip out all tier 8 heavy tanks, 95% of tier 9 heavy tanks, I believe all tier 9 medium tanks. And obviously, when you start to get towards the tier 10s, obviously, it's taking away 3/4 of most of the tanks you're going to be facing's hit points. That clip is very strong, and that's going to kind of be pretty much its party trick, its only strength. And you're going to kind of have to play around this tank's armor, its slow speed, and its poor dispersion to be able to make it work. If you're unable to do that, then yeah, you're going to struggle in this tank. But let's compare this tank then very quickly to some other similar tanks that are in the game. For example, the Object 752, which was released in the 2023 Christmas boxes, and then the TNH TVZ 51, which is the Tech Tree Tier 9 Czechoslovakian Heavy. So, the Medvedev is winning in terms of DPM, 2.1k, blows the other two out of the water. Penetration, winning, pretty much blows the other two out of the water, especially the 752, which has a very similar clip. Alpha damage, identical to the TNH, better than the Object 752's 390. Clip size, has the best clip size. Obviously, the TNH has the stereotypical Czechoslovakian heavy 2-round clip, and the 752 has a 3-round clip. The Medvedev has a 4-round clip, giving it a much better clip damage of 1760, which blows the TNH out of the water, more than doubling it pretty much. And the 752, once again, blows it out of the water. However, something to note is the TNH does deliver its clip in 2.7 seconds. The Object 752 in 6.4 seconds. However, it does take 11.25 seconds to deliver the Medvedev's 4-round clip. So, not particularly great. It's going to take a lot longer to deliver that damage, but it does have higher DPM and it's higher clip damage, so do bear that in mind. Identical caliber guns, and as I said, inch-clip reload, 3.75 seconds is bad. The other two have better. Gun handling-wise, it has better aim time, the Medvedev does, than the Object 752, but worse than the TNH. However, dispersion-wise, it has the worst dispersion, the TNH having 0.38 and the 752 having 0.4. 0.43 is very bad, as I said. I can't particularly think of a Tier 9 heavy tank, that off the top of my head that has worse dispersion. So definitely a weak point. Gun depression wise, identical to 752, 8 degrees, just comfortable. Speed wise, pretty much identical speed to the 752, 36 compared to 35. Both are going to be slow tanks, both kind of have to run turbos. The TNH is pretty quick for a heavy tank at 50. Reverse speed, pretty similar, 16 for the Medvedev compared to the TNH's 15. The 752 has 12, which is pretty poor, but reverse speed isn't particularly the most important statistic. Important to note that the Medvedev has really bad, actually, ground resistances when you compare it to the TNH and the 752. 752 has significantly better terrain resistances, so it's going to maintain its speed better over a multitude of terrains. However, the Medvedev will struggle with that. And armor-wise, it does have the worst armor here compared to the TNH and the Object 752. 752 has a pretty reliable turret, 330. The TNH has a cupola, but it's pretty small and there's 300. Obviously, as we've seen with the Medvedev, cupola, weak turret with a weird tumor and then a weak hull. So armor-wise, definitely the worst out of the three. And then something interesting to note is it has 150 less hit points than the TNH, which has 1900, and identical hit points to the 752. So, as you can kind of see from this tank is gonna kind of fall into the kind of gimmicky range of tanks, with its kind of scary feature being its clip. It's not going to be particularly great at much else. It can't side scrape. It can't particularly sit on a hull down. This tank is going to be one where you kind of play as aggressive as possible in it. Obviously, its speed is going to be a limiting factor and its armor is. But you play as aggressive as possible. You try and isolate a tank and you try and put all 4 of your rounds in as close as possible, with the likelihood that if it's a tier 8 or a tier 9 tank, you're going to kill it as long as you penetrate all 4 of your shots and roll average. So, you do have to bear that in mind. That's going to kind of be this tank's forced playstyle. Definitely going to be terrible on a ridgeline. Definitely going to be terrible at mid to long range. As close, as personal as you can get is going to be better for this tank. But when are we going to see this tank? That's going to be an interesting question. Well, it's looking kind of, as I said, gimmicky, which kind of tends to fall within the loot box kind of similarities for tanks, kind of the stereotypical loot box tank. And we do have Christmas coming up. And the trend has been for the last few years to include tier 9 premiums within that. And in my opinion, I feel it's going to be highly likely we will see the Medvedev in this year's Christmas boxes. And if it's not in this year's Christmas boxes, likely in some form of other loot box into 2025. Which type, I don't know, couldn't tell you. But I feel like it's going to be likely we see this tank as part of some loot boxes. But it's a tier 9, so it could have its status changed from a premium to a reward and could be included as part of a Battle Pass tank. One which you spend your Battle Pass tokens to get next year. So we'll see. But do let me know in the comments what you think about this tank. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? I'd love to hear your opinions. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.